All right, so here we are. This is the Golden Field Z3 computer case. It says on the packaging that it weighs right around 6 kilograms, which is, if I'm not mistaken, something like 14 to 15 pounds. But it doesn't really feel like it's that heavy at all. So we're just gonna crack this open, take a look at it, and kind of go over some of the features. And then I'm actually gonna assemble a PC in there and just kind of give my overall thoughts on how easy or assembly friendly it is. So opening it up here does seem fairly well packed, like you would expect for any standard computer case. So I'm gonna yank this out, throw it on the desk, and then we'll kind of look through it. It's actually plexiglass side panel and front panel as well. We'll get into it in a second, but there's fan mounts everywhere, and what they actually advertise it with is LED fans that they actually do sell. So it kind of looks, gives you a kind of cool effect if you actually use those fans. So these little thumb screws were actually tightened with a screwdriver. So I actually didn't need a screwdriver to open it up for the very first run, but I'll probably just keep them hand tight moving forward. So getting right into it, you can definitely see that you do have some form of cable management. Most of your cabling is coming through the back behind the motherboard tray. There is a separate area for the power supply itself. Let's see. So I have some screws, fasteners, and there's actually a little bit of instruction that comes with it as well. So what we're gonna do, let's take a look at this other side right here. The other side is kind of plain Jane, but who's looking at that side anyway? Once you pull off the other side panel, you can see the hard drive trays down here, and also all the cabling coming from the front panel, and this little guy that you can't really forget about, because this is actually for the on-off buttons, which are interestingly almost like a little touchscreen. So there's no actual button there, so they do need to be powered constantly for them to operate. So this little guy will just go in between your motherboard connector and your motherboard to get power for that. Now, one thing to note is it does not come with any fans, but there's plenty of space for fans. So obviously you're not gonna put a fan down here where your power supply is. Your power supply has its own fan, but there is a cutout with a grill and filter down there, which is awesome to have, because sometimes you don't even have that cutout and your power supply fan's not doing anything. There are spaces for fans up here as well, for 220 millimeter fans, as well as one back there. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but there is space for 3 fans up front. And of course it's vented down at the bottom, and it's also vented over on this side as well, so that it can get some air in there. So let's move right along here. If you take a look at the top of the case, those are going to be your standard ports. I'm actually not sure. I think that's for an auxiliary fan, so if you want it on or off, that's what it looks like. I haven't actually explored the manual on this, but 2 USB 3.0s up front, 2 standard USB ports, and headphone and mic jack over there. And if I'm not mistaken, this little grill right here, if I read that correctly, is magnetic, so it does just lift up. But obviously I'm gonna have a hard time doing this because I don't have any kind of fingernails, but let's see. There you go. So that is a magnetic grill, so that you can just lift it up to clean the dust off of it, and then it'll just slide right back in place. kind of nifty little feature. So realistically, I was mostly just looking for a more compact case when I picked this thing up, but I think it kind of looks cool as well. And for the price, it's actually a great price. I think it was $70-ish, something like that. But I'm gonna go ahead and transfer everything over from the beast of a case that I do have now into this computer, and I'll kind of run down how easy or how hard it was once I get all that stuff done. And I think, let me see something here. It looks like we actually do have a couple more fan locations down there as well if you wanted to use those, kind of blowing up towards your video cards. So that's another cool little feature. It's obviously not anything too fancy as far as what you're getting. You're not getting a bunch of toolless screws and little connectors and clips and all that. But for the most part, you're going to put your case together once, your computer together once, and you're going to call it a day. So for me, I'm not really looking for those, fancy little retaining clips and whatnot, for example, for your expansion ports. So it's just the standard screw type, if you can see that right there. But again, yeah, I'll put this back together, or I'll put this computer together, and I'll kind of go over some thoughts and what quirks I found while going through that process. All right, so now that I got this all together, I wanted to go over just a couple quick little things that I noticed while putting this case together. So obviously there's plenty of room for fans. You could do 2 more fans down here that I opted not to, just because it doesn't really make sense with my video card in the way. Space for 3 fans up front and 2 more up top, which I only did 1 of, but who knows, maybe I'll do another one soon. And then there's also the space for this rear fan, where I have a radiator with 2 Corsair fans mounted. So aside from all the fan space you get, just wanted to point out that you do have 2 SSD drives on the opposite side of that motherboard tray, and there's a spot for a 3rd one here. Maybe this will be one that you swap out often for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe a backup drive or a video drive or something like that. Clearly there's plenty of slots for wire management. You've got one right here in the center, another one down here, one right up here where the motherboard connector is coming through. And there's actually, you won't be able to see this, but there's 2 more up top at the top of the motherboard tray. And if you happen to be using a shorter motherboard, which I am not, there is another couple of slots down there, but I'll show you there are some useful slots down there as well. I don't know if we'll be able to get it from this side, but you can see some cabling coming up right there. That's through one of the wire management slots, and that's one of the other ones. So let's turn this thing around and I'll show you what's going on the opposite end of it. What I was mentioning earlier was there is a couple of, you gotta fix this guy too, but there's a couple spots right there for your SSDs. There's also 2 spots down here for the hard drive, which I'm only using 1 of. The rest of it I'm just using to shove extra wiring into. I know some of you guys don't even use SSDs or regular hard drives anymore, but I guess I'm old school like that, so I did need those spaces. Otherwise I could have just removed that as well and had less wiring at least. But I'll show you, here's a spare hard drive cage that I'm not using. So this is actually a toolless cage. It's got little tabs that snap into where the screw holes are, and you don't have to worry about tightening down any screws or anything. But on the SSDs, there actually are screw holes on the opposite side. The one quirk about that is the 2 forwardmost screws on each SSD are actually behind the front fans. So I'd have to take the front fans out just to remove the SSDs. Or if I would have realized it earlier, I could have just put 2 screws in the SSDs and not worried about the front screws, because obviously there's no moving parts or anything to be worried about there. Other than that, you can obviously see more of the wire management slots. One back there, one over there. We've got one of them up here. There are, you still can't see these guys, but let's see. Yep, there's one right there. And there's actually another one right up there. You can barely see that one. Either way, there's plenty of wire management slots, I think. Did I mention that one? If you're using a shorter motherboard, there are these two slots as well back here. Clearly there's a lot of little loops for you to throw zip ties into. They're pretty much all over the place. You got one up there, one here. I mean, they're all over the back of this. And another added little bonus, the back of the motherboard is exposed at the socket so that if you're putting in a different cooler or whatever it is, you don't have to pull your motherboard just to do that. I know most cases are like that these days, but you kind of don't expect it on a budget case, and this one does have it. So on the power supply, it is elevated from the bottom of the case, so it's not going to be sitting on there. And there's actually space and a grill. Let's see if we get an image of this, or we could just tilt the case. There is a there is a grill right there for the power supply fan as well. So you do have, airflow, and you do have a little grill in place there that is removable for cleaning. Other than that, the one thing I did notice that kind of drove me nuts was getting this plate in. Did take a while to figure out. I thought it actually sits all the way back here, but it's recessed in just a little bit. So it took me a second to figure that out. And one of the other little things that I didn't particularly like was, and I mean, you could clearly see it on that one, since they do use little slots for the fan screws, for the holes, just so that it's a little bit more adjustable and you have some play in it, you sometimes get that where your fan just wants to pull all the way through it. So be aware of that. That is something that can happen. Here it is all plugged in and ready to go. As you can see, the side cover does fit, even with my wire management being the mess that it is. And you've got your cool little plexiglass side. There isn't much as far as lighting inside of the case, so you're not going to see much in there. But if I did throw in a couple more fans, it would definitely light up the inside of the case. But just want to point out again that you do have little touchscreen buttons, so they're not actual real buttons. So if we go ahead and touch that one, it will start up. Now you kind of see where the lighted fans come into play. And also worth mentioning that you can control certain fans from this button right here. So whatever fans are wired into this switch will be controlled by that button. The fans are also made by Golden Field, and they're actually a lot quieter than what it might seem like. The fans that you hear right now are actually my fans on the radiator, which are a little bit louder. But yeah, here's a great little case if you're looking for something compact that still looks good. Again, this is the Golden Field Z3 case, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Just wanted to give you a quick little update. I figured out why my radiator fans were loud. I had them pushing and pulling against each other. So now that I got that straightened out, you can clearly see how quiet this case actually is. Or these fans as well, but yeah, take a listen.